Hey everybody, welcome to week 143. And yeah, my voice is kind of crappy, and it's not because I was yelling at the Kansas State versus KU upset, which we don't get to do that very often in basketball. But this was a very special week, but it's not because I was yelling. I got the stinking COVID for the first time in 3 years. So bummer. But nonetheless, and Adam is remoting in because we have an all-day Q1 strategy session for our management team with our coach, Robert Fish. And that's a painting behind him of behind Adam of Robert Fish doing a trail ride.
Yeah. There you go. Robert Fish's ass right there. Everybody, if you want to see it, you can blow it up.
Oh my gosh. So I hated missing that and being with the team in person. We were going to have to do this remotely anyway, but I'm doing it from my home office, and Jack is with us as well. So you guys know the drill. Hit us up with questions on Q&A, harass us in the chat, but I'm going to do a one-word unscientific poll that I want you to use the chat for. And I want you to, when I tell you, we'll tee that up in a little bit, but it'll be a one-word response of what Jack is going to tee you up with on the 3 C's that we're talking about today, which is culture, compensation, and communication. So before we launch into that, also we are probably going to try to cut this a little bit short today, just so you know. So we'll probably try to wind up in about 30 minutes to 45 minutes today, just because of all the stuff that we've got going on. So good to have everybody that's on here. Adam, you got some rants?
Yes. So it's kind of a continuing rant. It's more like, hey, this is my public service announcement for a minute. And remember, I always feel like I need to start this by saying, remember, I'm a libertarian. I hate both parties. But meaning stay out of my business. But just a reminder from last week's call that, this whole debt ceiling crisis, hey, we need to cut entitlements, there's a tax that comes in that's your Social Security taxes that is taken out of your paycheck. And then there's money that's paid back out as a result of it. That money paid back out is going to, like my generation is paying for generations that are already retired. The generation behind me is now currently paying in to fund, my retirement, Jack's retirement, Gary's retirement. So it's a system that was originally designed to be neutral in terms of, hey, inflows coming in, pretty much match outflows going back out. And the current problem is that the outflows going out are greater than the inflows coming in, and that's primarily due to the fact that there are more people that are retired getting paid than there are people contributing to the system. So there are a couple of tweaks around the margins they can do around that. Raise the age, means test Social Security, things that I'm actually a proponent of. That seem to make sense to me. What does not seem like a very good strategy is to say we're going to cut benefits, because if you cut benefits, like what have I been paying the taxes for then? So I just, it's just a reminder that, that feels like kind of a non-starter when people talk about it. I don't see how they're going to get that done. But related to that, when they talk about the debt, the debt ceiling crisis, and the Democrats, chickens that come home to roost on them Democrats, they're coming home to roost, all this, their fiscal irresponsibility, the Democrat Party. So these are the facts. Since Bill Clinton, there has not been a balanced budget. Every president, Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, all have had deficit spending. And either the debt ceiling was a crisis or we passed it and hey, let's keep on borrowing the money, you know. But the last time it was this close, it was a Republican Congress and a Democrat president. Now it's going to get this close again, and it's a Democrat president, Republican House. You know, two pass during the Trump administration with no issues. But if you go back to, well, what was the problem? I mean, in Bush's time frame, the problem was, and this is actually kind of the same thing that happened with Trump. Again, remember, I love tax cuts. Tax cuts are great. Bush passed a tax cut that was supposed to pay for itself based on the growth of the economy. What happened? Dot-com bubble burst, stock market crash, no economic growth. Then 9/11 and 2 unfunded wars, big deficit. What happened under Obama? Getting out of the Great Recession and all the stimulus spending that happened as a result of that. And then, there was also some spending associated with Obamacare that was supposed to drive down, healthcare costs, which was a implicit tax to the rest of us. You go under Trump, what happened? He did the exact same thing Bush did. Unfunded tax cut based on a projection of economic growth. What happened to Trump? COVID. So, double whammy. Cut taxes and the economy slowed. That's like double down on your deficit spending. Plus, he had the stimulus spending that actually got spent to get us out of the pandemic. So if you look at the Biden administration, what's real about what's being said? What's really about being said is there's a lot of people that think that, kind of the second stimulus that passed the third stimulus that passed under Biden, a lot of economists think that may have been unnecessary. Got bipartisan support, that one actually passed on straight party lines. A lot of people thought it might have been unnecessary. That money actually got spent. You could pin that right on a Democratic administration. But the infrastructure bill that got passed, that is a pretty big bill. That money has not been spent yet. And it was somewhat bipartisan. So you can't really say that that's what's causing the deficit spending today. This is just us. This is us having to take a vote to pay off the debts of money that was already spent. That's it. And it wasn't all Biden. This has been years of administrations of both parties that have done that. So I don't know. I feel like it's my job to point out silliness. So I also agree we got to figure out how to cut spending, because continuing to borrow money to fund our current lifestyle is not a good plan. But blaming it on the other guy is just real disingenuous. It's all of their faults, not that way. In other words, it wasn't just Republicans, it wasn't just Democrats. They're both equally culpable. So I'll shut up now. If we just lost any participants, Gary, I apologize.
Well, no, actually, and what's funny is it ties into the 3 C's. Culture sucks in Washington.
Yeah.
Compensation, it's great when you get to make your own pay raises. Yay. And then, communication sucks. So it's just yelling at each other. So maybe that's a great example of what not to build when we're building privately held companies. So, Jack, you want to tee up hey, I want to get your input on the 3 C's?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. So this morning it will be unusual in the sense that I'm going to do a little more talking and lecturing, because I found some really good articles. I just, happened to do some Google searching, and so wanted to share some things with everybody. But at first, just out of curiosity, if you guys would participate in the chat. So thinking about, culture and compensation, and what would be one word that is the most important element in promoting a healthy culture and moving forward in your business maybe particularly in your business or just generally speaking. So whoever wants to kind of jump into the chat and throw that out there. But I'm going to start out with, there was an article, and it was actually a survey that was done, but it had frequently asked questions, and two of them was, what is corporate culture and how does it shape an employee? And so the definition that they put out there was corporate culture is a term that refers to all the different behaviors, values, and guidelines that determine how the company's personnel interact with each other. Company culture is also concerned with the attitudes, practices, and ethics codes of the workplace, so it has a huge impact on the performance of employees, their sense of purpose and motivation from an emotional and or practical perspective. That's a lot of words to say, kind of the same thing that we've been saying, not that we're geniuses on this program or anything, but I mean, it's just kind of like, it kind of makes sense. So what I'd like to do is maybe drill down into a couple of things in relation to that. So the next frequently asked question is, are there different types of company culture? And they say in this article, company culture is classified into different types, and each has a unique approach that contributes to building a solid workplace foundation. And they assert that the four main types of company culture are clan, which is collaborative, hierarchy, which is a control culture, creative culture, and then market, which is the competitive culture. And then there's other classifications within the subgroups, such as task-oriented, role-based, purpose, customer-driven, et cetera. So keep that kind of framework in mind as to what we're about to talk about. So the first article that I found, and it's called "How Company Culture Shapes Employee Motivation and Other Tips for Improving Performance." So again, these are not my original concepts, but I think you'll agree when we talk about this that, yeah, that sounds right. And hopefully you're doing a lot of these things. And if you're not, maybe, this is a thought-provoking discussion about maybe you should be doing some of these things. So the introduction to this is understanding the connection between workplace culture and employee motivation is that while many business leaders and executives are often concerned about employee satisfaction, it's technically not the key to achieving results and reaching goals. While it helps to have a satisfied, and so, okay, think about what I just said a moment ago and think about what I just said now. I'm going to read this again because it is maybe counterintuitive. And maybe where you didn't think out, maybe you didn't realize or didn't think I was going in that direction. But while many business leaders and executives are often concerned about employee satisfaction, it's technically not the key to achieving results and reaching goals. Okay, so employee satisfaction. While it helps to have a satisfied employee, you also need to make sure that your employees are motivated to give their best. And that's where company culture comes into play. You'll see that I think when I first read this, I'm like, they're kind of saying the same thing. If they're saying that company culture makes good employees, there's a satisfaction element to the culture. So so I kept reading. A good company culture that emphasizes the appreciation of employees' achievements and makes them feel supported will also motivate them to perform. And then they throw in these little boxes, little factoids. A 2013 study tasked over 2,500 employees with analyzing medical images for objects of interest to study the impactful meaning of workers' motivation. And it was not related necessarily to satisfaction, but it was related to culture. All right, so benefits of a motivated workforce. And a lot of these are going to be, and I use this very technical term, the duh moments, which is, okay, yeah, no, nothing surprising. Improved productivity and innovation is listed. And then the factoid, various studies confirm that these findings found that engaged and motivated employees will have up to a 12% pump in their productivity levels. So a 12% increase. Now, they also say, however, if you build and maintain a healthy company culture that awards and recognizes employees, you're more likely to see a reduction in turnover rates by up to 31%. So keep in mind, we're not only talking about obtaining employees, we're also talking about retention. So we're talking about culture. I believe we're also talking about satisfaction, even though this article is trying to kind of differentiate between the two. Attracting better talent through referrals. Motivated employees are also more likely to refer other talent to your company to have better quality teams capable of achieving goals. Next thing, better company image and brand recognition. A better work culture will give your company a better image to the public, which can boost your reputation and attract high value customers. So then the article goes into how to tell if your company culture is actually motivating employees. And again, some of these are, of course, but maybe some of them made me think, okay, and maybe literally think what's going on in my office around me in my own little group in corporate transactional M&A franchise, but also in litigation and other places, and the staff overall. So kind of it caused me to give some thought to what's going on at Shumaker. Noticeable enthusiasm and increased productivity. This is the first and easiest sign that employees are motivated. Higher talent retention. Employees who are motivated are less likely to leave their job, as we just said. Taking initiative because they're aligned with the values and goals of the company. I hear a lot of complaints by clients that, and a lot of this is attributed, and I think somewhat unfairly, to millennials. They've gotten the reputation of just, okay, just kind of moving along and doing their thing and getting paid and, working on the weeks, no weekends, no late nights kind of thing. But, as far as taking initiative, and I see that here at Shumaker, we're very fortunate that we do have that here with attorneys, but with staff. I mean, when, I have a staff person, and I'm spoiled, I admit it, and I sing praises to my legal administrative assistant that she was taking the day off. There were some other people in our secretarial pool pod kind of thing that were taking the day off. They thought that one person was going to cover. This was during the holidays when things were a little bit slower, like right before Christmas. And she found out that one person was got ill. And she was in a panic, and she was like, okay, are you guys good? She reached out to all of the partners that she does work for, even some of the ones that she doesn't do work for, but she knew that we're working on deals. And so that's the kind of thing that, I'm, again, very fortunate and continue to try to foster in my practice group and in the firm. And so that's why I share that. And I think that it's just so important for people to care about what they're doing and not just showing up for a paycheck. And so the next thing is supportive work environment. So it's my job as an owner to be supportive of those people, to be supportive of my partners when they say, hey, look, I'm going on vacation. Do you mind covering for me for this? My assistant is ready to assist you, whatever it may be. And then seeking continuous feedback, which is also, I think, something that a lot of business owners and managers don't do. It's kind of like, well, if no one's complaining, I'm not going to ask, because I either don't want to know what the problems are, or there's no problems because no one's saying anything. I've seen clients where they have a suggestion box, and they're talking that, oh yeah, come tell us what your problems are. When you go tell them what the problems are, nothing happens. And in a worst case, there's retribution for bringing things up, and you definitely don't want that. So, being assertive and seeking continuous feedback at all levels, that is, lateral levels, that is people that are, you work for, or people that work for you. So then the next part of the article talks about how can you use or change your company culture to motivate employees and increase performance. Things that we've talked about before. Identify clear goals and core values. Start from the recruitment process. You gotta, if you have kind of a crappy way of finding people and bringing them in, then are you surprised with what you end up? If you bring them in and don't have a good intake process, it's kind of like, sink or swim. And I have clients that do that. There have been admittedly some breakdowns here in our firm that sometimes we just get so busy, and it's like, okay, I thought you were telling them how to use a document management system kind of thing. And so we're much better at that now than we were in the past. But I see a lot of that. It's like, okay, well, you got here, you're a smart kid, you know how to use computers, so you figure it out kind of thing. And let us know if you have any problems. That's the wrong way to do it. Involve employees in decision-making processes. Get their buy-in on certain things. I've had discussions with my staff and say, look, I understand the issue, but understand that, we're dealing with a large enterprise where there have to be rules and regulations. I trust you to do the right thing, but I don't know what's going on in another office. If, for example, and this was something that was that occurred, in many of your businesses, but the whole work from home thing and how you're going to manage that and deal with that. And do you trust that person's actually working from home? And are they going to be responsive and are they productive? I mean, the reality is I find it hard to believe that someone who is accustomed to working in the office is going to be as efficient at home. Now, there's obviously exceptions, and there's people that will be just fine in either place. There are people here that absolutely do not want to work at home because they know that they are more productive here, or they want to be able to shut it off. That's another problem too. Now I'm going off on a little tangent, but the people that, including myself, that it's 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6:30, and you're like, oh my gosh, okay, what about dinner? What's going on at home outside of my home office that normally I'd show up and participate in that kind of thing. And so, and then, celebrate achievements and career highlights. We tend to, and we do a better job, I think, at Shumaker at putting those things up in LinkedIn and celebrating those things. Some felt like that is bragging, or like, hey, look at us, look at all the good things we're doing. We're, and some people saying it's a popularity contest because then you see how many likes you get. I understand that perspective, but I disagree. It is celebrating the successes and doing it publicly to show that you appreciate the work that person put in, that you as an employer are out there telling the world and singing their praises. Look how wonderful this person did in a professional setting. Facebook is a different thing. That is more of a social thing. And I know that people use Facebook for business, but I'm talking more of like the LinkedIn, we post something or put something in the Charlotte Business Journal, whatever it may be. So, and then the last element of this article, actually there's two elements, but it is elements of effective high performing company culture. And they talk about, basically just a reiteration of some of the things that we talked about. And then lastly is what leaders should do for greater performance success. And the lead-in sentence to that section is, people work harder when they feel their work makes a difference. However, a motivated employee willing to give 100% requires an equally motivated leader. Here are some essential tips that can help leaders generate high levels of performance and success in the workplace. And we've already talked about some of these. Always connect and communicate with your team members. Encourage professional and individual growth of each employee separately. So I did skip over part of one of the points in another section was, there are times to communicate to the group, and there are times to show that you care and communicate one-on-one. And it doesn't have to be take someone out to, lunch or anything like that. But, there are times where you want to make it more interpersonal with the person that you're talking to. Create reward system that includes promotions, job enrichment, internal and external stipends, and monetary and non-monetary compensation. Again, a no-da moment, but the key here is the non-monetary compensation. And we've talked about that in the past, which is what can you do, a $20 Starbucks card, a $50 Visa card, whatever it may be, to show. I will tell you, and I can't take the credit for the authenticity of doing this, but my wife, as a leader of her team, got, and it's like personalizationmall.com or something. And she got these memo books with a nice pen, and it had the company logo on it, but something personal to each person that she knew about that was engraved into the front binder, the leather part of the memo pad, which I thought was genius. And so I did a variation of that for my corporate group here. And, the appreciation because of the personalization was significant, and quite candidly and selfishly, I think the benefit of that was significant as far as the culture and the motivation and all the things that we're talking about. Create a steady channel of feedback and assessments, the good and the bad, but the bad being constructive criticism rather than getting on people. Maintain a positive attitude, be open to new suggestions and ideas. there's this interesting book that I'm listening to. It's called Out of the Fog. And it's the intended audience is for someone who is in a relationship, whether it's a marriage, whether it is, a dating relationship, long-term, it could be a family relationship or a friendship, but it's about narcissism. And I'm reading it, first of all, to make sure that I'm not a narcissist. And I've had friends who've said, well, the fact that you're asked that question and you're reading that book means that you're not. I'm like, okay, good. So we've gotten that out of the way. But I'm reading it because I like to understand people and why they do things and certain things. So when you have an opposing party that is just unreasonably adamant, or when I tend to be a proponent of, well, let's try to be objective and show that, okay, you're costing the company these millions of dollars year after year, and show them on an Excel spreadsheet and show them what the other divisions are doing. And they're not having this bleeding. And so, and having discussions, and yet they're like, well, it's not me, it's everyone else kind of attitude, or I can do no wrong, or it's someone else's fault, or, they don't. So again, there's a lot of elements to narcissism that I had no idea about. So it's very interesting. But, so my point in saying that is, a typical narcissist is not open to new suggestions and ideas. I'm not accusing you of being a narcissist if you are stubborn. I'm just saying that, good leaders are willing to listen. They're willing to evaluate, and they can say no. But it's the ones that say, I don't even want to hear it. I think that those are the ones that have maybe some difficulties in building a good culture. And then channel your own motivation into the teams and always show enthusiasm. That can be tough sometimes, we're all human beings, and as leaders of our respective companies or in management or ownership, showing up for work with a smile on your face is not always difficult, or is not always easy, and can be difficult sometimes. But that registers in people's minds. When I walk in, I say hello to our receptionist in Spanish, because I know that she is teaching her, or she's not, her daughter is teaching her grandson Spanish. So I am practicing her Spanish with her, every day, and trying to throw in a new word to kind of, throw her a zinger. But so things like that, I think, make a difference. And let's see. So I don't know if you want me to stop there. And one thing that was in another article, geographical differences. And I think that companies that have geographical differences, and that should be acknowledged and incorporated into the culture. So what, for example, it might be the culture in our Tampa office is going to be different than Charlotte, maybe different than Charleston, maybe different than Toledo. So it's, all those things that, understand. You want to create a consistency within the company, but you also want to acknowledge the personalities of the office and the people that are in them, so that, when the Bucks are playing football in prior years and doing really well, and they want to celebrate that, and, it's like, okay, well, that's what they're going to do. And, okay, productivity may go down for a little bit, but okay, that's okay. So recognizing and acknowledge the geographical differences. So I'm going to stop. I've said a lot, so I'm going to stop there. I have more if you want me to keep going, but if you guys want to give my voice a rest, then that would be awesome.
I've got a question. That book, Out of the Fog, sounds interesting, especially when you're dealing with COVID. Will that help me reading it? Will it help me get out of the fog?
It's probably going to throw you deeper into it with all of because it is like, okay, you either this or that, this or that, this or that. And it's like a lot of that analysis. And then they throw in real life stories into there, and you're like, okay, interesting. So, but yeah.
So I sent everybody a nudge in the chat. All right, send us one word that's critical to the 3 C's of culture, compensation, and communication. Papa Joe, you've taken the lead dog position. And his answer was transparency. Ooh, that's a good one, man. I worked under a CEO that was a sociopath, didn't even know what one was until everything blew up and we realized, oh my gosh. And he definitely was a narcissist too. But he thought transparency was selective transparency. Like, well, wait a minute. No, it has to be kind of everything. Oh my gosh. Oh, respect. That's a good one, Bruce. That's a very good one. You know, the one other thing that I'll weigh in on this, because we do a lot of coaching about culture. And, you know, management sets the tone. I'm sorry, but if you have a crappy culture and you're the leader, look in the mirror and then get really honest about, okay, what's my part of this? Now, it's not just you, but management does set the tone. And, you know, if you're autocratic and, you know, this is how it is, and I'm going to give you edicts from on high, there will be some people that can tolerate that, not a lot of people, especially now. But leaders can change if you want to, and if you see the need. And a lot of times people don't know how. And, you know, so enlisting the help of your front line that you trust, enlisting the help of people that will actually speak the truth to you can go a long stinking way, because you as the founder, you as the CEO, you are actually the chief culture officer. You are the CCO. And the buck does kind of stop with you. And it is a journey. So, you know, if you say, well, gosh, man, our culture stinks, you know, don't whip yourself tremendously over it. Do something about it. And you can. And if you need help, let us know. We're not trying to sell you something. We'll give you some additional resources or point you in some directions that can help. So we got transparency and respect. Both of those are really good. Integrity would be another one that I'd throw in there. You can't have respect without integrity, though, I don't think. So anyway, also, while we were in the throes of that, we did get a question that's interesting that kind of goes back to the front end of this conversation from Papa Joe. And the question is, in the past, most war efforts have had a positive effect on the economy. Can the same be true of the Ukrainian effort and funding? Thoughts, Adam?
You know, I don't, it's hard to say because I don't know enough about the economic aid that's been shipped. I mean, on the one hand, how's it helped in the past? It's really boosted defense spending because we got to make some stuff. In this case, I don't feel like we're really making stuff specifically to go to Ukraine, rather than just getting some stock that we already, you know, kind of had that I guess maybe will replace over time. I think the more interesting economic piece is just around, you know, pain causes change. You know, no, I don't want my gas stove banned, and at the same time, you know, has it kind of spurred people in Europe to really think through energy independence from Russia, which is primarily, you know, natural gas. So, you know, I do think maybe there'll be something, I don't know what it is, but maybe something interesting that happens there that will have some economic impact.
I think that's an interesting point. You know, they're firing up nuclear power plants again. You know,
Yeah,
Greenpeace was shutting those babies down.
Well, no, they're actually there's a lot of people that were on kind of the green warrior debate that said, you know, one of the biggest strategic flaws that we made was being against nuclear power. I mean, I actually would agree with that, because the efficiency, I mean, you sure spent nuclear fuel rods, you know, suck, but in terms of the efficiency with which nuclear energy produces power relative to the environmental footprint that it leaves, I mean, you can't beat it. So
as long as we don't have 3 Mile Island and other things, but
Fu-
you're right.
Fukushima and yeah, that's not so
Yeah.
bad. Out of all the nuclear plants, there's only 3.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, the Chernobyl.
one of them was caused by a typhoon. I mean,
Yeah, I think Joe weighs in on this one. Fusion is the future. I think that's true. And there are some interesting things that are starting to come out about that. So we'll see. We will see. But I think a common sense approach, which is what is missing in Washington, everything is like one extreme or the other. And it's like, there are common sense approaches to find solutions. That'd be another thing that fits into culture within companies. If just the extremes are embraced by whomever is in power, a lot of times you miss the real good stuff, which is oftentimes found in the middle, where it's not a pure this way or pure that way. Common sense is not so common anymore, it seems like. But if you're running a company, guess what? You get to choose. You get to choose. That's one of the blessings of privately held businesses and free enterprise, as long as we still have it in this country, man. So
Gary, there's I have a little bit more information specifically on communicating compensation changes, which I think is always a difficult. I call the first 2 weeks of January poaching season. I probably shouldn't do that, but the reality is that if you're on a calendar year and you find out what your compensation is, so in a partnership, all that has to be tied up, and then you get your final distribution, and then you have to pay your estimated taxes before the 15th, or in this year it was the 17th because of the holiday. That how do you effectively communicate that? The communication, and I'm not talking about necessarily the actual communication that this is what your final compensation is for 2022 with bonus, et cetera. This is what we think you're going to do in 2023 with a raise, whatever it may be. I'm not talking about that specifically or only that. I'm talking about the whole range of communication of your structure, of your pay structure, and how it's going to be implemented in that. So there is this other article that I found, and would like to share a few things like that. So getting compensation right starts with the correct strategy. You need to demonstrate clearly how the reward system are structured, as well as how they link to the overall business and individual performance. So basically linking to performance, but that can't be necessarily the only metric that you say, okay, if you're successful. Yeah, I just don't think that not all businesses are set up to eat what you kill kind of thing and throw a little bit into the pot. And so the next is to have a clear employee value proposition. Every piece of your benefits offering should have a clear value and purpose attached to it. It does no good to pay for complex employee benefits that no one ends up using. Okay. When determining how much you should utilize in your package, return on investment may not be the best metric. Again, I'm saying we're talking about performance again. Too often, a return on investment, meaning investment to the company or the employer, merely focuses on the employer side, when benefits are all about the employee's point of view. Measure success via a value of investment instead of a return on investment. This sounds familiar. Transparency can help provide equity and justice, consistency and transparency across the company. And then there was a section on effective communication makes all the difference. You should, again, personalize communications, focus on the channels. I thought that was interesting. I'm like, okay, you don't really talk about channels. You talk about business channels and about distribution of goods and services and that kind of thing. What they're talking about here is channels of communication with your own employees. If leaving someone a piece of paper on their desk in an envelope or something like that is not going to be effective for someone who is, everything they get is, it has to be on a computer screen, or they're not going to see it. Or the really important stuff has to be via text, because they're not going to check their emails It may see that as just background noise and not check it. So know your people, know how to communicate with them, and then leverage total rewards. Again, talking about not just monetary compensation, but non-monetary compensation. So those kind of things, just some suggestions on how to get the word out. Don't wait until it's time to tell somebody what they got and what they might get in the next year. There needs to be some understanding of what that is necessarily. And I'm not saying that you have to be definite and say, okay, if you hit $2 million, your commission is going to be definitely this as a bonus. I mean, you may still have a commission structure, but I'm saying a discretionary bonus that it may be, totally discretionary. I'm not saying take that away, but just, make them understand that if it is discretionary, that it is discretionary. And I go back to one of our favorite movies of all time amongst this group and many others, in Christmas Vacation. I always think it's funny when Clark says, well, it's just unfair to take away the bonus when people rely upon the bonus. And, we don't know what the bonus structure was about. It could be that, he got to certain metrics and he's entitled to that. And then they took that away. But, when I heard that initially, I was like, okay, bonuses are typically discretionary. And so, to say that you rely upon that, that's basically your salary. You're basically putting your bonus into your salary. So, just clear communication, lines of communication, so you don't have to, feel like Clark Griswold.
Yeah, everybody, I think communication is the number one issue in every company that has more than one person, and if you don't believe me, be married. So, yeah, I think that's exactly right. One thing that we did this last year and implemented it for this year is we made real clear, you want to hit a bonus threshold and it's a X%. These are the things that must be met. There's no ambiguity. It's completely up to you. Whoa, it's all within your power. Well, that removes the, oh, well, I didn't go golfing with Adam last week, so, I guess I'm going to have to start going, golfing with Adam. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the criteria that were set out. I want to address a couple things before we shut this thing down. So Joe Farr said accountability up and down the company. Man, I totally agree with that. Transparency without accountability. One thing, if nobody's read it, or if you've read it, reread it, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Woo! Patrick Lencioni. That is one of the best things that you could read. It's an allegory. It's a very fast read, but it gets into really an engaging story about what are the culture killers. And on the converse, when it's done right, the culture reinforcers. So if I was going to give you a book besides Out of the Fog for COVID, I give you Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and Bruce, who actually does have something to say about the energy world because he's spent a fair amount of time in that world. Bruce says nuclear and hydro are being diminished and yet are zero emissions. Yeah, risks abound, but can be managed. Complexity doesn't mean it's not managed. Great point. It's always good to see you here, Bruce, too. And I was so glad to actually meet you in person a couple of weeks ago. So anyway, I think we are at the bewitching hour. We're about 11:45. Jack has a spin class that he wants to go to or something. No, I think it's a Danskin. He's got some sort of a Danskin thing going on. I'm kidding.
You're talking out loud. You're talking out loud again, Gary. We've talked about this. Okay. What happens in the few minutes before 11 o'clock is not to be spoken after 11 o'clock.
Oh, man. Well, thank you guys for taking time out of your busy day and busy week to join us. Next week, we'll see what we're going to go into. There may be some additional new things coming down with all this debt ceilings fight that's coming up and all that kind of stuff. So there will probably be some wackiness coming out of Washington, and stuff is already starting to dribble out of there. So stay tuned and hold on to your hats, but keep doing what you do, making this America a better place because of privately held business owners like you. Jack, thank you again. Always fun. Adam, it's always good to see you. And we'll just sign off, and anybody that came in late, we'll put this up on the BGW CPA YouTube channel later on. Take care.
Cool.
Thank you, guys.
All right. See you guys.
Bye-bye.